Hi, my name's Paul. I'm a personal trainer and nutritionist, and today I want to talk about cholesterol. Let's first just mention the fact that in 2015, the Department of Health and Human Services in the USA actually declared that cholesterol, they believed, was no longer a nutrient of concern. So you have to ask, why is there still such a pushback in the medical community that we should be trying to lower our cholesterol? So what is cholesterol? Well, cholesterol in itself is a lipid. It's actually made up mainly of fat and protein, and is actually carried around in a lipoprotein. So what we think of as being cholesterol, LDL, for instance, HDL, these aren't actually cholesterols in themselves. They are actually low density, high density lipoproteins that are carrying a cholesterol molecule. There's actually 5 different types of lipoprotein. So we've got a VLDL, there's an IDL, an LDL, HDL, and chylomicrons. I'm not going to go into all of them in specific detail, but we'll cover the ones that I think everybody's aware of. An LDL is actually a low density lipoprotein. An HDL is high density lipoprotein. Now, in a healthy human body, the amount of cholesterol that's being carried around in the body is the amount of cholesterol that the body wants to carry around. It's basically what the body feels is the homeostasis point. It's not a matter of there should be a certain amount of cholesterol in the body. It's the amount of cholesterol that the body wants to have to be able to perform all of its functions. There is no such thing as a bad LDL, and there's no such thing as a good LDL. The LDL its main role is to supply the body with all of its nutrients. So basically the cells, all cells in the body, the organs, your hormonal system, everything relies on cholesterol. Cholesterol is actually in every cell of the body. In fact, even the brain is made up of 25% cholesterol. Now, we don't directly get cholesterol in our bloodstream from cholesterol that we take in our diet. The liver makes the cholesterol that gets sent out into the body. Some dietary cholesterol will get used through the normal dietary process. It will end up in the liver. The liver then repackages it and sends it out in lipoproteins to actually do its particular job. If we didn't have cholesterol, we would die. We wouldn't survive. As I say, it's part of every cell membrane. It also helps the immune system. It helps fight off diseases, and so you have to wonder why is it demonized? Why is something that is so essential to our life demonized in such a way that we feel that we should artificially try and lower the level of cholesterol in our body? There are bad forms of cholesterol. There is a particular form called an SD LDL, which is a small, dense, low-density lipoprotein. This tends to usually occur when there is specific types of inflammation in the body. This can generally be, or it's certainly believed to be, caused by a poor Western diet. So if we're eating too much seed oil, if we're eating too much processed carbohydrate, certainly lots of sugars can all play a role in the development of inflammation in the body. But in a healthy system, there doesn't tend to be any level of LDL that is actually harmful. So how do we get to the point where cholesterol is demonized? Well, it goes back to the 1950s when heart disease was on the rise. There are other possible associational factors. Certainly the increase in the use of seed oils in the 40s and 50s. The prevalence of smoking could have all had a bearing on heart disease. But for some reason, somehow they landed at perhaps dietary fat being the cause of heart disease. And one particular person, Ansel Keys, done some studies, and he come up with a hypothesis that cholesterol in saturated fat was the cause of heart disease. And he set out to try and prove this hypothesis, which is actually a backwards way of doing science, because in science, if you have a hypothesis, you should set out to disprove the hypothesis. But he was quite a belligerent man. He decided he was going to prove this point, and so he done what was called what was actually termed the 7 countries study, although there were actually 22 countries involved in the study. He decided to discard 15 of the countries because they didn't actually match the results that he was trying to prove. He was trying to prove a hypothesis. So basically, he's trying to prove that he was right. They didn't match his belief, so they never got into the actual finished trial. But so what happened next? The next thing that happened is somehow the US food agencies decided to adopt this actual belief that saturated fat must be the cause of heart disease, and they came out with their food guidelines suggesting that you should cut down on your fat, cut down on animal protein and animal fat, and reduce the amount of cholesterol in your diet. This would reduce the incidence of heart disease. As I'll mention, perhaps in another video, this didn't actually have the desired result. But unfortunately, it's a premise that's stuck around for another 80 years, and we're still fighting against it now. The main reason being, at the same time, the food and drug industries started to research how they could reduce cholesterol, because this seemed to be a potential money maker. And as it turned out, it turned into a $1 trillion industry, both for the food industry and the drug industry, where we end up with statins, because they actually found that they could reduce cholesterol in people's blood results. And so this drug is actually going to take off. It's now in the zeitgeist of all of Western society. So we've now got a ship that's almost going to be impossible to turn. So basically, we've ended up now with all these cholesterol reducing drugs and foods. And despite the fact that there's been decades of studies showing that there is really only a very, very poor relationship between cholesterol, saturated fat, and heart disease, this myth, belief, whatever you want to call it, has perpetuated, and you've now got food industries and drug companies that want to make it stick because it's so valuable to them. Most research that's done now is actually funded by food companies and drug companies to continue their gravy train. In fact, if you think about it, if someone came up with a study they wanted to do that was going to cost £1 million to prove absolutely categorically that saturated fat was not a cause of heart disease, it would never get funded, because if they proved it beyond doubt, then there's no money that can be made off the back of that. There's a $1 trillion industry that's going to collapse. So you can imagine the pressure to actually maintain this belief. There is a new body of evidence, but as I say, you've got to, if you want to find this out for yourself, you've got to dig very, very deep. You won't find it in the search engines. Everything that you will find is behind or below sponsored research, sponsored food companies, sponsored media. Legacy media are never going to change the narrative, because all legacy media is sponsored by food and drug companies. This is where they actually make their money. And so you have to wonder how good information is ever going to prevail. So really what you have to do is you have to dig really deep, go beyond all the sponsored information. There are people out there with information that they want to share. Even your doctor, even dietitians, they're bound by their own regulations. Even if they thought that perhaps what they were preaching wasn't true, they couldn't say it because they would lose their license. Doctors are taught almost nothing about nutrition in their studies anyway, so doctors know very little about nutrition, only what they're actually taught to tell people. So, as I said earlier, the associations are very weak, and in fact, the consumption of meat has dropped somewhere in the region of 25% over the last 80 years in the Western world. Yet the increase in diabetes and heart rate has increased almost on the opposite curve. So basically, heart rate and diabetes are going up and meat consumption is coming down. What is going up in relation to heart disease and diabetes is the massive increase in the intake of highly processed food and seed oils. But as these are massive industries, every study that can even show a link somehow gets either buried, or they extrapolate the wrong information out of these studies to show that actually it's connected to animal-based food, not processed food. Look, the reason why I'm doing these videos is because I've worked in the health industry now for 6 or 7 years, and I actually realised that although I'm a personal trainer, the big problem that people have is that their diet is just not optimal in any way. And it's not because people are foolish, it's not because they deliberately want to eat unhealthily, it's because there is a narrative that's being pushed. It's been pushed now for 80 years. There'll always be a strong push that we should be eating a high carbohydrate, high vegetable diet, cutting down on animal products because it's supposedly healthy. It also helps the food industry. The food industry make billions of pounds in profits in all the food that you see in the middle aisles in the supermarket. And the drug companies make billions, if not trillions of pounds on medication that is going to falsely lower metrics that have actually got nothing to do with good health. So I realised that nutrition is actually the way to good health. And I want to get people to not take my word for it, but to actually go down their own rabbit hole, as I say, do their own research, dig deep, advocate for yourself, make up your own mind, because the information is out there. The government isn't going to tell you what it is. Your doctor probably doesn't know what it is. A dietitian's not allowed to tell you what it is. You have to find out for yourself. So look, if you think this is useful, if you think there's any useful information in this video, share it with your friends and family. Please subscribe to my channel because I'm going to be bringing a lot more of these videos. Like it, comment, by all means comment. I welcome comments. If you don't agree with what I say, please comment. I'll answer comments on any of my videos. But anyway, do your own research and I'll speak to you in the next video. Thank you.